You know that the night time, ooh, is the right time to be with the one you love. Ooh, yeah. Don't you know, baby? Night time to be with the one you love. You know who I'm thinking of. Night time is the time to be with the one you love. Ooh, yeah. Say now, baby, my mother died and my father, well, he broke down and cried. Ooh, baby, yeah, when I come home, baby, I want to hold you in my arms. You know that the night of time, ooh, is the time to be with the one you love. You know who I'm thinking of.
I'm DeMers from Denver, Colorado.
And I'm Campbell from Austin, Texas.
And we are your instructors for Drag Blues video number 5. Drag Blues is a fusion dance. In this video, we're going to go over the philosophy, perhaps the definition of fusion, and or at least one approach, and offer then ways in which drag blues might meet some of these values and definitions. And afterward, we will have a practice session with you where you'll learn some great moves and movements and creative ideas for adding to your dancing, especially into your drag blues. So to get started, we thought we would start with how we define a dance. Campbell and I, when we think about defining a dance, we firstly reflect on the influences on the dance, and that might be some of the history and culture. So, for example, in blues dancing and its development in America and in Black America, some of the pressures and stresses that were put on them to then evolve the art form of blues music, and then the reflection of that music, blues dancing. You could consider maybe even Tango in Argentina and the cultural influences there as well. So once we start examining some of the cultural influences, Campbell and I then say that music would be the next defining trait in defining a dance, and because the music will inspire the rhythms and the moods and the tones. The music has tension, it has release, and how the music is expressed, movement is then a reflection of that expression, movement being the third trait in which we might define a dance. Now some people might say, hey, you don't need music to move. Well, you're right, you don't, but in general, Campbell and I would come from the stance that the music is a strong defining factor. So then once movement is starting to develop, we can then say that the dance is starting to develop itself. Now, we believe that when a group of individuals come together and have a shared set of cultural values, agreeing on set patterns and forms, that's when the dance begins to have a life of its own. That's when the dance can be shared with others. Dance can then, for example, can tell a story and can communicate in that manner because of this codification. And after, Campbell and I would say, after we have this history and culture that influenced the music influencing the movement, we would say that in partner dancing, connection would be the last defining factor in defining a dance form. The ability for two people to come together and communicate non-verbally. So Campbell, what do you say? Do you think drag blues is a fusion style?
I think so. I think it lends itself very well to dancing to, well, more than one music style and kind of folding in some elements from both blues and tango, honestly.
Yeah. When we think of the influences of drag blues, you might consider the dance styles strutting, ballroomin', slow drag, all of these blues forms, and then also swing. And so the fact that we might consider drag blues a modern dance form and one that fuses together these traits and characteristics, drag blues inherently is fusion, at least a defined fusion style. And so one of the goals of this video is to extend that concept of how drag blues may be a strong basic for fusion dancing, although we are not advocating it's the only basic, because fusion dancing can have so many different dance styles combined together, and drag blues just being one of the fabulous dances that we might be able to do.
All right, so when we want to try to define fusion, we get asked this question all the time: what is fusion? And I think it's fair for everybody to have a slightly different take on it. We have our own personal ideas and beliefs, but Joe and I have tried to put together a definition to share based on our beliefs today. And
but they're going to change tomorrow.
Who knows? We're evolving as dancers and as teachers as well. And it really starts with a combination of two or more dance styles. So we just defined for you how you define a dance style. And so fusion, we think of it as combining two or more. And we decide on which dances to combine based on the music that's being played, right? So we try to match the music as much as we can. And that music gives us a variety of different sounds. He mentioned tones and textures, of course, rhythm versus melody. And so what we hear from the music then defines which dance styles we want to pull from. So as dancers, we consider ourselves interpreters, right? It's sort of like a language. We're hearing the language of the music, and then we're putting it into the language of our body, as well as our connection, right? So we're fusing a variety of dance techniques, and that means that we could pull from, we mentioned blues and tango and swing, but we could also pull from, things like hip hop. So there's a really wide variety of options to create a fusion dance. The other element that we really want to bring up is the connection. How do you create connection in fusion? And we really believe that frame matching, which the previous videos have really addressed, and how we use that in drag blues and in our dancing in general, frame matching really is the key to connecting with your partner in fusion.
At times the music may not drive inspiration for a codified dance style, and so in that instance, how do we maintain the integrity of partner dancing while meeting the demands of perhaps an unfamiliar music, right? Unfamiliar sounds, wanting to experiment with different movements. And so the second category for us in breaking down our definition of fusion is the creative elements of dance. And Laban had a notation and a codification of this, and one interpretation of the creative elements of dance is to have different parts of your body moving, right? To have different actions within the body, such as twisting or bending, to take space in the different ways we might take space, whether that's being in high, middle, or low space, whether it's to dance in general space or my own space, self-space. We can change elements of timing, and we can change elements of energy. And so that will be the last part of our video today, being creative with fusion and drag blues, and varying the elements of creativity. Now, oftentimes we get asked, is fusion just contact improv? And we would say that that at times it could be similar. You know, how we feel in that moment, how we wish to express in that moment, may drive us toward a more contact improv sense of movement and interaction. But what we would say is that, different from contact improv, we would say that fusion dancing maintains a heavy influence from the lead-follower framework. And that might look like traditional lead-follow. It might look like switch dancing, which is where I might be a leader in one moment, and I switch to becoming a follower in terms of our shared roles. At times, we might have soft switching, where I might maintain the leader role and then respond to his or her initiations. And perhaps another dynamic is not connecting at all, but still maintaining this interaction of two dancers dancing together to the same song, expressing similar ideas. Campbell, what else might you say about connection and fusion?
We started off this video by defining how do you define a dance style, right? And as part of that, one of the elements was connection. And we find that a lot of fusion dancers really focus on connection as almost their primary element of the dance. That's what they start with. And frame matching being a really strong tool and framework for doing that. When I think about my fusion dancing, I've got connection with my partner, and then very quickly followed by that is the music and how our movement is being inspired by the music. But without, I don't want to forget about the history and cultural context of the dance styles that I'm drawing from. So those four elements that Joe mentioned before, they're all there, but perhaps connection is getting a higher priority in terms of how we're defining our dance in the moment when we're dancing fusion.
Which is why frame matching is so strong, because it's the concept that has the potential to bring us together, regardless of whichever dance style we might be dancing. Now let's get to some dancing. If you haven't checked out the other 4 drag blues videos, the first video being on the history of drag blues, the second video on the walking technique, the third video on moves, the fourth video on connection, go check them out. It will help give context to this video for drag blues as a fusion dance. So Campbell, what do you say we start fusing our dances?
Let's do it. So
Great.
We're gonna analyze the differences first between, let's say, drag blues and tango.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So let's start with the differences. Understanding the differences really gives us more artistic tools for improving our fusion dancing, right? As we are able to switch from style to style, from movement trait to movement trait to movement trait, right? Ideas of posture, ideas of tone, direction in a movement, the energy in movement, right? Whereas one movement might be smooth and sustained, another might be strong and sharp, right? By understanding the differences of the two dance styles, it will be easier to bring them together as a leader and follower to initiate that change and to communicate that change and say, hey, come on, let's change dance styles to this song. So, as Campbell said, drag blues lean versus maybe more of an A-frame tango connection. Another idea is how we might use the rib cage. In drag blues, we might have a little bit more sway, right? We could say that in drag blues, we might explore more space with the rib cage.
To me, it's more 3D versus, yeah, it might look like this.
For drag blues?
Yeah, let's see a little drag blues. Right. And you're watching our rib cage and how it's moving. Right, we're moving in a lot of different directions. Versus, if we're looking at tango, we're probably more twisting our rib cage around our axis. So it's a more limited range of motion, and we tend to keep it quieter, I would say, than drag blues. To continue the idea of exploring the body shaping in drag blues, let's look at how it affects my legs as a follower.
Oh, I love this one.
Right, so you see, Joe uses a lot of this swooping feel, right, which creates a lot of interesting momentum expressed and carried out through my legs. Now, tango does have momentum through the legs as well, and there's an assumption actually in tango that a small movement in the upper body then gets amplified into the legs. One example of how the follower's leg might take some momentum in tango is a boleo. Let's look at that. Push a little front ocho, followed by a back boleo, and a front boleo into something else.
And perhaps another difference, which is probably pretty clear, is that drag blues has options to open the embrace and potentially break the embrace, whereas tango, we might find that it's less common for that close embrace to be open or even broken. So an example of breaking the embrace in drag blues might be doing one of our turns here, and maybe some other type of redirections. Bring in my tango already, right?
In tango, you'll see a lot of close embrace and then transitions to open embrace, but we still maintain this partner bubble, if you will. And only rarely, maybe in nuevo tango, do you break it with a turn, an underarm turn coming back together. So we maintain the embrace more in tango.
So let's do a little sequence here to practice transitioning between drag blues and tango. And we'll break it down a little bit, but you're going to have to go and practice on your own. And make sure you get a partner because it's more fun with a partner. So here's a sequence that you can do. Starting with drag blues. So can you identify which parts were more drag blues and which parts were more tango? Let's find out right now. Check your answers. It's all you.
Okay, let's look at the very beginning. All right, we're going to start with the lean of the body, which we've seen in drag blues. You can see the shapes we're making are very drag blues-like with the turn. Right, the swoop of the leg, and now instantly you see this posture change from Joe. He's really tightly collected, and he's inviting me around him in a circle. I feel a redirection. It's very quiet in his body. I feel direction. Now, this is a moment that's interesting because it's fusing this idea of cross system from tango, right? But when you look at it, his posture, he starts to change it to drag blues, and then right here, we're back to drag blues.
So as a review, some of the identifying changes between the styles are perhaps the posture of the body, the shape of the body, the stance of the feet, Tango being tight together, drag blues maybe having a little bit more freedom in where our feet might be. The rhythm even, you can see on the exit of our ocho here, so as Campbell is brought into the ocho, I'm going to exit with her in cross system, this ba-da-ha, and more of a swinging jazz rhythm there. And then the initiation of movement. At different moments in drag blues, we might have different shapes which are going to create different initiation points, right? Whereas maybe in our tango, the strong initiation will come from the chest and the projection of the body going forward. What do you say we switch up the dance styles?
Let's do it.
Let's do drag blues and another blues dance, Jukin. Jukin. So Jukin and drag blues, the differences.
I think we should start with pulse.
That sounds amazing.
Okay, so if we're gonna show some Jukin, right? One of the main characteristics is this idea of pulse, right? The heartbeat of the dance, expressing the underlying rhythm in our body, right? Now, if we want to put this right next to drag blues to see, is there pulse? What do you think?
Typically, we would say that Jukin has a vertical pulse, right? And drag blues has this horizontal pulse. And we imagine a jellyfish. We go like this because it's our project and drive, project and drive, project and drive.
Next, let's look at isolations and how they're a big part of Jukin.
So let's start with the hip isolation. So here, we might isolate the hips, right? Maybe a close embrace. Maybe bring back some of that pulsing. I don't know, let's turn her, see what happens here. Nice. And then maybe some feet isolation and leg isolation. Maybe some chest isolations, right? Maybe we're going to do some rolls, and roll, and roll, and roll. Maybe bring it back to more hips, right? Maybe send it into the knees. Ha, ha, ha. In drag blues, it tends to be less liberal when it comes to isolations. We have it more as an accent of the shape or an extension of the shape, but we don't necessarily, in drag blues, hit the rhythm with the isolations. We have more of elongated ideas and movements, such as this, right? Such as this, right? Bring her through, back, and through, and back, right? Our movements, right? We extend and sway, right? We have more of a whole body movement instead of an isolated movement.
And I think actually this relates really well to how we express the music differently between Jukin and drag blues, right? So the body isolations and the pulse from Jukin really relate to the rhythm section of the music and express it as the bass line, right? Whereas those elongated lines he was mentioning really tend to pull out and draw out the melody.
Yes.
So drag blues tends to be more on the melody side. That's a key difference.
I think along with that, when we dance Jukin, because of that rhythm section, because of that pulse, we tend to dance more in place, right? You may have noticed that earlier. And then with drag blues, it's more of a traveling dance, right? It's smoother, more to the melody. So the music does help drive how we choose our movement, but also, our movement helps drive how we listen to the music. And then what do you say we talk about followers contributing?
Yeah, so in Jukin, followers contribute a lot of solo movement, right? So for instance, if we were to kind of get groove in here, I might change what I'm doing in my hips, right? And then that might change my body angle. And then however Joe wants to respond, right, it might affect what his next choice is, right? Or maybe I add a little shoulder shimmy on top, right? And then that affects our dance.
Whereas in drag blues, I think Campbell contributes a little bit differently. I think she changes more of her body shape through the connection. Maybe you change how you tone up with me. She changes the timing of her weight transfer to give a moment of stretch or a release of stretch. It might look like this.
Here I can really move my body into this shape, right? I just extended it. Yeah, nice.
So now, let's put on some music, and why don't you say we switch between Jukin and jazz.
With the one you love, ooh, yeah. Don't you know, baby, nighttime to be with the one you love. You know who I'm thinking of. Nighttime is the time to be with the one you love. Ooh, yeah. Say now, baby, my mother died and my father, well, he broke down and cried. Ooh, baby, yeah, when I come home, baby, I want to hold you in my arms. You know that the night of time, ooh, is a time. Be with the one you love. You know who I'm thinking of.
We've looked at combining drag blues with tango and with Jukin, with specific styles. And now, what if we want to combine it with something a little more open-ended? How do we draw from, what inspiration are we getting for that type of movement? So Joe and I are going to look at creative dance elements. How do you experiment when you're trying to come up with something improvisational? And we're going to start looking at it from a solo perspective, because I think it's a little bit easier to understand. And don't worry, we're going to get to putting it into a partnered context. Let's look at moving individual body parts. So we've got a lot of options here, right?
Here we go.
We can move our hands, right? We can move our shoulders. We can move our rib cage, right? We showed some hip movement earlier, right? So initiating movement in different body parts, but there's more to it than just that.
Right? We might be able to isolate the different body parts, but then, if we choose to have a whole body movement, where does that originate in our body? And so maybe, for example, if we're going to do an arm wave, I might start distally at my fingers and send that through my body, maybe back out. Maybe I want to start distally with both hands, send it into my body, but then send it out of my body from the core area out. We could, head movement or even feet movement, right? I might start with my foot, I might hop with my foot, I might initiate something that's a little bit more engaged towards the core to add in a movement. And so the point of origin of where we might initiate our movements.
Cool, so we're thinking about parts of the body where we're initiating
In the body.
as well as shapes of the body.
Mm-hmm. And so we might do a bent shape,
Yeah.
right? Maybe a straight shape, maybe a twisted shape, maybe a curved shape. Lots of round shapes. An angular shape,
Mm-hmm.
right? Different shapes of the body that can give, that can give interesting textures to the dance as we're creating our movement.
Good, so the second element for our creative movement is going to be our action, okay? So specific actions might be like a stretching of the body, so how we're moving into a shape, right? Twisting, we mentioned, that's an action. It's more dynamic at this point rather than the static shape. I might rise up or fall, right? I might swing a body part.
And notice that most of these actions are in one place, so we call these non-locomotor actions.
Versus the contrast is locomotor actions, which, a simple one would be walking, right? A skip, of course a run, a slide side to side.
Maybe a turn down the line.
Maybe a turn down the line, right? Versus a turn in place, that gets back to the non-locomotor.
So we covered 2 of 5 elements. The first is parts of the body, using the body shape, different initiation points for movement within the body. The second element was action, right? How we choose to move the body, whether it's in place or across the floor, non-locomotor or locomotor. Our third creative element is space, right? How we use space around us. So if you imagine that the room around us is a canvas and we are the paintbrush, right? How are we going to paint our canvas? We might firstly be up here in high space. We might be in mid space. We might be down here in low space. We might have different size movements, right? I might have a small movement. I might have a big movement there. We might choose different spots around the floor using not just my self space to create shapes, but the use of the general space around us. So using this movement of creating pathways, for example, right? How we'll create those pathways through space, in moving through space. One might be down the line, one might be curving. And then you combine pathways with, an action, right? I might be moving and have an action in there as we be going across the floor.
And another element I even see that really does fit within space is moving forward or backward, and that one's going to come up a lot in the partner context.
And that would be our direction, right? Forward and back. And then orientation, right? Do we face one orientation or do we mix up the orientation as we go? And the last element of space is our relationship to our partner, right? And so if we're alone, as we separate, that gives us different opportunities to create different ideas. And as we come together, right, that gives us different opportunities to create different ideas. And then if we apply it to our partner dancing, imagine that, right? Imagine just dancing in self-space. Imagine our partner space, right? Imagine our general space, right? And how those interactions might change.
Good. Our fourth element is going to be time. And we're going to look at time from just straight up tempo. How fast are you moving, right? So if let's say I'm walking, right? I've got this speed, and then I've got this speed.
Double time.
Right? Double timing it, or half timing it.
Can you go quarter time?
Oh, goodness.
You ready? Let's see it. I like that one.
Yeah? So we've got a lot of different tempos to play with. We also have the rhythmic pattern that we've chosen, right? So maybe one rhythmic pattern might be something like this, right? Or another time choice would be something like this.
Maybe a triple rhythm.
Right. Boom, ba-da, boom, ba-da, boom, ba-da. Yeah.
So from body, action, space, time, we now get to the fifth element, energy. And
Joe loves this one.
it's the best one for me because in drag blues, if you can master your basics, and if you can master frame matching, then you get to manipulate the energy, and it is the icing on top. It is the best. So when it comes to energy in drag blues for me, for us, we think of how we enter a movement, right? We consider this the attack, right? Do we enter a movement pretty sharply, right? Or do we enter a movement pretty smoothly, right? Sharp, sharp, or smooth, right? Timing has to do with that too. Sharp or smooth, right? You see the attack and the timing change. Another one might be a sudden movement or a sustained movement. We might go ba, ba, or we might sustain that movement before we transition our step, right? So to hold a movement or to release it quickly and to suddenly have those changes. This falls under the attack category. The next one would be weight, how we take a step. So for example, pushing off the floor. We might have a strong push off the floor or a relaxed push off the floor, which gives us more of a walk.
So it can feel really light or heavy is one way of thinking about it.
So how we push maybe through space in our energy, how we land through space, right? It changes the energy of the movement. And we think maybe the last one would be maybe the flow or the quality of the movement.
Yeah, either tight or free-flowing.
Exactly. Once we get to the energy piece, we start to bridge every other element of body, action, space, time, and energy.
So let's take these 5 creative elements and apply them to drag blues. And then we're going to take some moments of improvisation, drawing again from these 5 elements outside of drag blues, and then we'll return back to.
And remember our message from the beginning, right? We might have a moment of contact improv, but for Campbell and I, we're going to maintain the element of frame matching, so that way we can feel each other's changes in postures, in tone, in tension, in energy, in direction. And so, what do you say? Should we put on a song, Campbell?
Let's do it.
You ready for this? Okay.
Don't you know, baby, it's nighttime to be with the one you love. You know who I'm thinking of. Nighttime is the time to be with the one you love. Ooh, yeah. Say now, baby, my mother died and my father, well, he broke down and cried. Ooh, baby, yeah, when I come home, baby, I want to hold you in my arms. You know that the night of time, ooh, is a time. Be with the one you love. You know who I'm thinking of.
That was fun.
That was. So I hope you can tell how much we love drag blues, especially from these 5 different videos. And we hope that dancers of a variety of backgrounds will fall in love with drag blues. And now you can think about it as a fusion dance.
So I encourage you, we encourage you to go out and learn multiple dance styles, right? Bring those dance styles to your fusion dancing. Understand the movement qualities, understand the history and culture, understand the rhythm as a reflection of the music. And so that way, when you come to drag blues, or when you come to fusion, you know differences. And these differences become your paintbrushes, right? You're an artist. And so let's get as many paintbrushes as possible to paint our canvas, the dance floor, right? And so things, as a reminder, things you can look for while you're learning other dance styles, you know, what are the postures and the shapes of the body? What are the stances of the feet, right? How do they push off the floor? How do they initiate movement, or where do they initiate movement?
Even the relationships between the 2 partners' bodies really differs between each dance, so pay attention to that. Not only the relationship in space, but then how they use the space, right? How they move from one position to another. Another takeaway from this video is, well, and from the last couple of videos, is that frame matching is a really useful tool, right? So we hope that you can go back and explore it and revisit it and apply it to all of your partner dancing.
So, as resources, go check out the other 4 drag blues videos. Number 1 being on history, number 2 being on the walking technique, number 3 being on moves, number 4 frame matching, and then, of course, number 5, drag blues is a fusion dance. You can also go to my website, joeandnelle.com, and you can download all of it for free, right? If you want to read a paper on frame matching, 13 pages long, it was published in Research for Dance Education, go to the website and read it. Remember, we have drag blues checklists, practice checklists there. Go and download it. Share with your friends. We love drag blues, you love drag blues, and we want your friends to love it too.
And if you have any questions for me, feel free to contact me through my website, which is austinsocialdance.com.
Thanks for watching these 5 videos with us. Hopefully we'll see you at events around the world. Bye!
See you later.
Ooh, it's the right time to be with the one you love. Ooh, yeah. Don't you know, baby? It's night time to be with the one